Good evening, Mrs. Smith. This is Meredith, and I wanted to share what I learned from reading this article with you. The title of the article is Effects of Repeated Readings on the Oral Reading Fluency of Urban Fourth Grade Students, Implications for Practice, and it was written by Musty Rao, Hawkins, and Barkley. From the very beginning, the author stated something very important. They said, oral reading fluency is an essential part of deriving meaning from text. Fluency is a particularly important skill in upper elementary school grades when students are exposed to higher level reading materials. The purpose of this article was to study and determine the effects of peer-mediated repeated reading on the oral reading fluency of urban fourth grade students. The research question was not stated explicitly, but it was discussed. They wanted to find out if peer-mediated oral readings help to improve oral fluency. With that, they made connections with oral fluency with peer-mediated repeated reading. The participants that were investigated during the study were 12 African American students. These students were between the ages of 9 years old to 12 years old, from a classroom of 32 fourth grade students. These students were identified as target students for the study. These students were chosen on the basis of the results of screening for at-risk markers in reading on the dynamic indicators of basic early literacy skills, also known as DIBELS, and on the basis of teacher nominations. Although the entire class participated in class-wide repeated readings, they collected periodic progress monitoring data only on the 12 students that were selected. Of these target students, 5 were boys and 7 were girls. A total of 6 students were identified as having a disability and received special education services in the resource room. This study was quantitative because they used structured observations while doing their testing. They used a visual analysis method and they analyzed data in terms of individual effect sizes and percentage change. Also used was the dual criteria method to increase the accuracy of interpreting the data. They drew baseline means and a second criterion line on the basis of the baseline mean for each target student's data. On the basis of the dual criteria method, a particular number of data points in the treatment phase had to be greater than both criterion lines to conclude that there had been a reliable treatment effect. This study included DIBELS testing, and it had a lot of percentages. Methods used were, they measured students' performance on unpracticed passages on a weekly basis to determine whether gains in reading fluency during repeated reading practice would generalize to unfamiliar reading. In addition, they asked what degree of integrity can classroom teachers implement repeated readings in their classroom. The researchers trained the classroom teacher to implement repeated reading on a class-wide basis, and treatment fidelity data were collected on the extent to which the teacher adhered to the procedures. Data collection process was separated into several different sections in this study. These sections include the baseline, student training, teacher training, and paired repeated readings. The baseline was determined for each student by DIBELS Oral Reading Fluency, or DORF, Progress Monitoring Passage. Students were administered fourth grade level passages. The researchers used a multiple baseline across participants designed to evaluate the effects of repeated reading sessions on the oral reading fluency of students. Before peer-mediated repeated reading procedures began, students went through 2 15-minute training sessions. The classroom teacher also went through a training session where she was given a script which included the various steps involved and the specific instructions to read aloud to the students. The researchers modeled steps by conducting the first class-wide session, which included training of the class. The students were put into groups according to their reading level, and then were assigned 120 to 150 word passages from their grade level language arts books. The students were then evaluated. The results indicated that all students improved their oral reading rates with the intervention over baseline levels. However, none of the students reached benchmark goals for 4th grade at the end of the study. The results confirmed that repeated readings is an effective fluency building intervention for urban learners. One of the implications that could be used is reading time. Several schools set aside time specifically for reading, commonly called sustained silent reading or DEAR, drop everything and read time, which entails silent reading. Although silent reading allows students to form a habit and love for reading, if the goal is to improve students' oral reading rate, then more time for overt reading activities must be established. As a teacher, I can allocate about 10 to 20 minutes for repeated readings, with additional time for vocabulary and comprehension building activities. Another implication is grouping practices. Repeated readings can be implemented with a variety of grouping formats in the classroom. Depending on student need, I can divide the class into 2 groups. While I'm instructing one group of students, the other group of students can be involved in repeated readings with my option of moving groups. Grouping practices can allow for individualized progress monitoring and decision making. There is a great degree of day-to-day variability in the classroom. So for example, some students may reach the goal or criterion sooner than their partners. Some students may be absent for 1 or more sessions. Such variability is common in the classrooms, and this was present in the study. So this article relates to our classroom learning by correlating with the video in class where the teacher and the student did a type of repeated oral reading called duet reading to improve the student's fluency. Although in the study, the researchers and teachers did not read the passage with the student like in the video we watched in class, the student did the reading independently. Researchers did find that students improved their oral reading rates by using repeated readings to build their reading fluency. This is my reference, and Mrs. Smith, I hope you enjoyed this audio podcast. Thank you.